All right, all right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of The Other Side of the Studio, where we talk about all things health, uh, life, and well being, everything, all outside of the studio doors. It all happens outside of the gym, it all happens outside of your doctor's office, it all happens outside of the studio. And I am so grateful to have today's guest, Jenn Tasnim Savage. Did I say that correctly, Jenn?
Tasneem, yes. Yes.
Tasneem Savage. And I am just so grateful to have Jenn here today. She has just spent years of helping people heal and 2 decades, right, of helping highly sensitive humans. And that is a huge topic, Jen. It touched my heart reading that. So I just
Oh,
want to welcome you, and I am so excited about our conversation today.
thank you so much for having me, Lauren. It's so nice to be here with you today.
Oh, excellent, excellent. So I'm going to bring forward this topic of highly sensitive humans. And I am a highly sensitive human. I know how difficult it is to navigate through the noise and distractions and the overstimulation, especially now more than ever, and how it truly impacts us. Can you tell us a little bit more about your journey and helping others process through the challenges of being highly sensitive?
Absolutely. I think there's two pieces that I think are really important to acknowledge because sensitivity can come from different things, right? Sensitivity for me has been a combination of coming into this world with a certain level of consciousness and awareness that, just the density of this planet and the difficulty between what my soul sort of had access to or awareness of, or these intuitions or these knowings, and how I felt like it didn't quite fit here. It's like, how do I navigate this space that feels really dense and hard? And, my truth meter is really dialed. So I'm like watching, it's like, you're saying something, but I know what you're saying is not true, right? And it's like, and just all the disconnect between that. And then there is the sensitivity that comes in our physical body, which I'm really, really just, I think we as a society are just coming to understand the actual trauma
Mhm.
that is not incorporated, and how when our nervous system is dysregulated, or we're in that hypervigilant state of trying to manage our environment all the time,
Mhm.
that there are sensitivities to that because we never get out of fight or flight, right? We're kind of on all the time. And so for me, it's just been, how do we find that space in between where I'm honoring the depth of my gifts, but I'm not ignoring that, there's some deeper work here. My nervous system, I need to do some work so that my body and my soul can be in harmony and work together. And that's no matter what's happening in my environment, no matter how crazy the world might be getting or how hard my relationship with my kiddo might be.
Yeah.
Like, can I be in a state of regulation and connection to something deeper? And so that has sort of, that's what my journey has really been about. And that's sort of the spaces that I help my clients navigate as well.
That is so beautiful. And I love the talk and the forward talk of moving from a dysregulated state
Yeah.
into a regulated state. And I feel that it is what causes so much disruption in so many lives. And of course, we know in this space that it leads to, a plethora of mental illness, a plethora of physical and just overall illness,
Right.
that by learning to find the ability to self regulate, whether
Mm.
it's through breath work, whether it's through incorporating some movement practices that can help, someone, is powerful. It's powerful. And I truly feel that we have the ability to we are our own medicine. We
Yes.
Now, we had a conversation several days ago, and I was just really, it's not left me a piece of what you shared in that conversation. And you mentioned this rise from the ashes.
Yeah.
And that just really has, I just have sat with that, and because I can truly relate. And
Right.
I would love to hear you speak more to that and what that means to you, for you, how you've witnessed it yourself, and through working with your clients.
Absolutely. Well, I think, none of us get away unscathed in this life, right? It's like we're going to experience these difficult transitions, whether that's a physical illness, mental illness, as you've mentioned, um, divorce, addiction, like all of the ways that our human experience sort of brings us to our knees, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I was mentioning to you that part of why this has been so imperative in my own life is because I lost my partner by way of suicide when I was in my 20s. And it was the first time, even though I had had a lot of, there's a whole chapter of things that occurred in my life before that. That was like my first major loss in my life.
Mm-hmm.
And, it brought me to my knees in every sense of the word. Like I just felt like totally, like, suicide is one of those things that you can't make sense of anyway. And the unexpectedness of it. It's like one day we're together and the next day we're not, right? So and part of that journey for me was allowing the grief
Mm-hmm.
to actually, like, what I realized is grief has been a great teacher for me, right? And it just has brought me to my knees and brings up all of the past losses, however small they might be. And there's just all of this unincorporated, I call it content, from experiences that we never really had the tools to manage. And so it's learning how to work with whatever that situation is. And it feels like, for me, I'm a Scorpio, right? So it's like I have a lot of Scorpio energy in my chart. And it's like, for me, transformation is like it's non-negotiable part of my life. It's just,
Mm-hmm.
I've embraced, as someone on a spiritual journey, the idea of dying 1,000 deaths. It's like our ego is holding on for dear life, and it's all about survival. It's not about that fully expressed soul experience that we're here to have. And so for me, rising from the ashes is like letting the thing, it's the breakdown before the breakthrough, right?
Yeah.
Whatever that thing is, which brings us into submission, which brings us into like, okay, I have to let go. My ego has to give up control. I have to, there's this deeper trust. I mean, innately we know this, whether we call that God or the divine, or there is something moving us, consciousness, right? And it requires that we let go of the lies that we
Mm-hmm.
tell ourselves, and the stories and the patterns we've inherited through our family lineage, and all of the wounding that our human experience, whatever flavor of that is yours or mine, but these core wounds that we all have at some point to reconcile. So for me, the rising from the ashes is really restoring hope,
Mm-hmm.
having a community of people that are there to witness, yes, you've got this. And there is something so much greater and so much more beautiful on the other side of the thing that we spend so much time resisting, right? And it's like, and when we
Yes.
out of resistance and we let the thing just work us over, and then we really can rise up a new version of ourselves with, again, coming back to our nervous system, with a greater capacity to hold life. And so really, that for me, there's lots of pieces of that, obviously, but that's sort of what I was referring to, and that sort of that rebirth. I mean, it really is a metaphorical being reborn,
Yeah.
it's like into new life,
Yeah.
or our next level of awareness, and it's just, for me, it feels like as consciousness speeds up and things like more love descends into the planet, and then that what is not love rises to the surface.
Yeah.
I feel like we just have so many opportunities for that
Mm-hmm.
work, for that process to be happening in our lives.
Absolutely. I know I've been talking a lot this week in our groups about breath work and expansion. And it really ties so beautifully into what you're saying as it relates to, yes, the nervous system, but also how it relates to the surrendering. And it's truly surrendering to all of, and I keep using noise, but the noise around us that we also often resist. And we try to push away that resistance by not looking at it and turning our back to it, where in essence, it is the resistance that can help us to rise from the ashes and feel renewed and have that rebirth. But it does take letting go, it does take surrendering. And as you just so eloquently shared with us, it just takes finding that ability to just accept as things are so that you can find that rise up and rebirth. Yeah.
Well, and as you talk, it's like I was a massage therapist for many years, so I've had my hands on hundreds of bodies, and there's this idea that like there's two components of it, right? It's like there's pain and manifested in my body, and I want you to like dig in really deep and try and make it go away, right? So it's just like there is an intensity to which we're like, and that's still an avoidant kind of pattern because they don't want to be with what's there. They want what's there to go away, right?
Right.
And then it's like, oh, if I'm resisting something that's, maybe not even in my body, but in my life, again, we'll do anything. We have so many addictive, we're all addicted to our phones. So even if you don't have a more severe addiction to food or sex or spending or, all of the millions of ways that can show up, it's like our minds just do not want to be present with what is. And it's like learning how to recognize the distraction, whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's something just beneath the surface that's really trying to get our attention.
Mm-hmm.
And rather than avoiding it, it's like, I am always like, how do we befriend it? It's like, there's that thing that hurts, right? There's this thing in my shoulder that's really bothering me. It's like, great, bring your breath into it. What does it have to say to you? And it's all, for me, it's always about intimacy, creating intimacy with self, with others, with God. And so it's like, how can I be more intimate with, and that takes building a relationship, including the hard parts, the things I'm resisting, the things I don't like, the things I wish were different, all of that stuff. And to just be like, yes, well, I welcome you here as a holy teacher to help me know myself better.
Yes. Yes. So beautiful. Absolutely.
And we're not taught this, right? It's like, where's the handbook for being human? It takes so long to figure this stuff out in bits and pieces along the way, right? And it's like, let's normalize that our life is about awakening to our divinity and coming here to be that beautiful expression that we uniquely are, and how that is part of humanity shifting into this new world that's being created.
Absolutely. And it is, and we're not taught that. That is absolutely true. And, I do feel like it's coming more forward. It is, I do hear my young adult children speaking so differently than how I was raised. And during that generation, where we were really taught to kind of
push it under the rug or pretend it doesn't exist.
Just shut up and listen. Exactly. And so I am grateful for the conversations, but I feel like there's a lot of work to be had, so that we do start to nourish our soul. And we all have a soul within us. And unfortunately, I feel we have been taught, throughout our past generations, of the opposite of nurturing everything else externally versus nourishing yourself internally, as it's labeled selfish. It's not selfish. There is that has a totally different meaning. It is, yes. So thank you, Janaki. It's so great to see you here. We're so grateful.
Hi, Janaki.
So grateful. And, so I do feel like it is now honoring the soul within us versus it being the body first and then the soul. It's the soul that's going to then ignite and enlighten the body. And that is where, from my practice, that I've been hearing it just backwards. And
well, and I think that is part of the shift, right? It's like, oh, there's enough awareness. Like, we don't have to go to the mountain. Or, we can go to India and be with our guru, and that's great, but it's not required anymore, right? There's access to spiritual knowledge no matter what the path, right? Like my Sufi sheikh, came from Jerusalem to the United States for the first time, like 25 years ago, 30 years ago, whatever it was. And I was so lucky to have met him. But in the past, before there was this like global, like these holy men or women or teachers around the world, it's like now we can just log on to our computers and access these teachers from wherever we are in the world. And I think that really speaks to, it's like, oh yeah, our life, like it's right here, right now. In my life is my spiritual path. My life is my spiritual practice, and I can engage with and be with source and my soul experience, as they say, while washing dishes or while parenting my kids or all of those things, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. I grew up in a very religious family where we were in the house, every moment that the doors were open. And, I honor those times, but it took many years of kind of, reconstructing what that looks like, and having this relationship with your source, and feeling that you have to be in this like building in the door, sitting in a
It's our heart, right? I mean, it's like, this is, I mean, what Sufism really gave me is like, yes, you can go to the masjid or the mosque, or you can go to the, it's like, be in community and do those things, but do not forget that the divine is inside your heart. This space in our own beings is where we connect. There's this beautiful teaching of like, God is closer to us than our own jugular vein.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, then why am I praying or thinking it's something up in the sky outside of myself? And it's like, and we're kind of at that place where that whole narrative is shifting, where people are building and having direct access to this spiritual wisdom and this knowledge and these energies. And so it really is about cultivating the remembrance that, not that we are God, but like we are that sliver of God having an experience as us.
Yeah.
And it's deeply holy. And that is just the truth. It's like, it's always been the truth, but now we as humans sort of have access to that. And then it really becomes, and it's like, it's so easy to like think it's like discounting the human part of me. It's like, I used to just be like, spirit is all that matters. It's like, no, without this body, my spirit can't actually have an experience.
Yes.
And the light as it comes in, and we're learning so much about DNA and healing, like, our genetics and what's possible, and reprogramming, all the ways that we can work with our brain and, create new pathways. And it's like, oh yeah, the light actually comes in. Mm-hmm. And whether that is through an energetic transmission, or if that is like you're talking about the prana or the chi that lives on our breath, it's like inviting that into the body begins reorganizing it. And then we can create that seat of the divine inside of our own heart and cultivate that relationship. And then we get to be an expression of love or those divine qualities more and more in our lives. Yeah,
absolutely. And then that, in my view, is then the heartbeat, the ripple out, so that we can spread love, because you're exactly right. It's impossible to give well, to share well, if this is broken, if this is missing, if the body is so important. But again, it is honoring and nourishing the soul within, so that you are able to spread the heartbeat. And yeah.
Well, and I love that too, because I've had some chronic illness recently, and it's, all of my perfectionism and all of my like waiting until, it's just like, can you be loved where it's broke, where you feel broken? Mm-hmm. Right. It's like letting, and that was part of my sort of next level surrender piece that we discussed, when we connected, of like, oh yeah, there's another layer of deeper trauma in my nervous system, and it's having a profound effect on my health. Mm-hmm. And it's underneath my, had been underneath my conscious awareness. And it's like, and how can and I had this moment probably a year ago where I was having a like debilitating migraine. I was in like excruciating pain. And I was like, if I stop labeling it as pain and I look at it through the lens of just sensation, It's like, could that sensation be God loving me really hard right now? And because it's like, again, if I'm in pain, I'm going to be in resistance because I'm not going to like what's happening, which creates constriction in my body, which continues the process of this cycle. And it's like, how do we create new pathways, it's like, so even in the brokenness, can I allow the love into that space in me, right?
Absolutely.
So, yeah, sometimes the body is the greatest, like, it is the entry point for those of us that like, okay, I'm a little stubborn. So
Isn't that so true? I know.
Yeah.
And then we're fighting it and kicking it, throwing a tantrum.
Right.
I don't want you here. And
Yeah.
whereas,
Again, resistance, right?
exactly. Whereby, if we just welcomed it, I don't know if you've read The Untethered Soul. It's a book that I've read by Michael Singer that it always resonated with me. But as he shared in one of the books, it was, just welcome it, have a party with it, enjoy
Yes.
it. It's the human experience, and the more we fight it, you are so exactly right. It's stored in our body. There's so much more stored in our bodies than we realize.
So much.
So much. Even those, from, our past lives, I
Well, I
feel.
mean, and that's the thing. It's like, and whether people believe in past lives or not, right? The consciousness is evolving, and people have a lot of different beliefs about that. But taking that whole spiritual aspect aside, it's like our genetics have been evolving and being passed on since the beginning of time.
Mhm.
So even if it isn't a past life memory from my soul, which, people have different feelings about that, it's like our body is an accumulation of every human experience that has ever existed on this planet.
Yeah.
So of course we're going to have memories or have, there's going to be a thread of whether I've chosen life to, on Africa as my entry point, or, South America or America or whatever. It's like there will be a different flavor to it. But all of that energy, that material, that information is inside at a cellular level. And, it's fascinating when you start looking at it from that perspective. And then for me, I've been doing a lot of studying and following the work of Thomas Hubel and the, healing generational trauma and Gabor Mate and how that impacts us. And it really is looking at in constellation therapy and the way that you can really tap into more generation. It's like, it's not just what's happening for me, but, and that pattern of like, whoa, what in my ancestry, what in my family lineage is trying to get resolution through me? Again, also don't take it personally, right? Like, don't attach this as a me problem,
Yeah.
but come in with like, this is what my soul agreed to, and I'm going to be the one that stops this pattern of poverty or addiction or whatever it is that our soul is here to really shift. So as you said, your children or my children or our children's children will have a very, very different experience of life because of the work we're doing right now.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I feel just a huge shift on that cellular level. And I do know, just in, numerous studies now are proving that we can change our DNA. We do have the ability to make those internal changes that can shift the globe. And, but again, it's like what we're saying is being open to accepting what is showing up, and just surrendering to it and celebrate the pain so that it can move through you, so that you can have that deep DNA shift that can make a change, a huge shift in the globe.
Yeah. It's like we're kind of talking about, internal stuff. But I'm just thinking as you're speaking of, I have had a very I'm going to say challenging relationship with my firstborn son.
Mhm.
And so this is like kind of an archetypical thing that I had an awareness about that I want to share because I think it's so important. He, for whatever reason, he just like karmically, like, I'm like, all right, we're here to work something out. And he's very independent. He is incredibly intuitive, and he knows a lot. And I have to remind him, even in your knowing, it's still a 14-year-old knowing, or now a 15-year-old knowing, but it's like honoring who he is.
Yeah.
But he is somebody, I mean, thank God, I've done so much work. I have very few people in my life who really trigger me to where I'm like dysregulated.
Mm-hmm.
And somehow he's like, and I have enough awareness to know it's like, all right, this is just my work to do. Like, he's the teacher, I'm the, but so one of these days we were sitting together, and what I love about him is he just is like, man, I'm really trying to understand what's happening because it doesn't make sense to me. And we'd had a thing, and I had a reaction, and then I, of course, cleaned up, energetically and emotionally, like we have a do-over. I'm really sorry I had that reaction, and system got hooked again, and and we're in dialogue about it, which is just like massive, like light years ahead of anything I ever had with my parents, right?
Yeah.
But then it was like he went to bed, and I was in my meditation, and I was just like, what is this really about? And I was praying really deeply because I want my relationship with him to be deeply harmonious. Like, I do not want to be having this pattern just recreate, because I see then how, as with me, he starts feeling like, what's wrong with me, right? Which is what we do when our parent figure can't honor who we are, and we internalize that as wrongness in us, right? And I'm like, I don't want to pass this pattern on. And so I was just sitting in meditation, and I was like, oh my goodness, this is a soul who came to be a king. Mm-hmm. He is seeded with the potential of the archetype of royalty, of kingdom, and it was like his requirement of me is to be the queen of my own life, to be the matriarch, to be his guide, to provide what he needs to become himself fully. And anytime I'm not in my evolved queen state holding the path for him, it's going to be like a zing to, hey, you're really off path right now, and your body is going to get the sensation to know it, right? And it took it out of the him and I bumping heads personally, and brought it into this sort of like macro, like what's trying to happen. And then I just thought back of like how many, like I said in the beginning of this, I came in knowing that like, oh yeah, the story my parents are living within is not true. Mm-hmm. And they didn't have the capacity or the awareness. I mean, it was another generation, it was a different time, but it was like I came in to help them realize there's more possible here, folks.
Yes.
And then it was just like, then I'm inspired to be, instead of getting in this fight with him and proving that I'm right and I'm the parent and you need to listen to me, and it's just like, thank you. Mm-hmm. And this is where it's like, when we can get to the point where we can bow to, it's like the namaste, right? It's like, mm-hmm. I see the God in you. Mm-hmm. When we can get to a point where we are doing that with every person in our life, we'll know the world. It's like, that will be heaven on earth, right? Yeah. And let's start that inside of our own families. Yeah. Inside of our own lives, you know? So it's like, so then I can be like, oh yeah, his soul has come to remind me of something. And when I'm out of alignment with myself, guess what? I'm going to feel that sensation in my body of dysregulation because I've stepped out of alignment with myself. And it was just like, again, there's something bigger happening. It's not about, I mean, yes, it's about me and him personally and our life together, but like something bigger wants to be moving through us. And can we make ourselves, especially in those moments of conflict, or, can we make ourselves available to them for the love to really show us the truth, to guide us?
It is so true. And those of us that are parents, and it comes into our lives in so many different ways. As a mother, I can totally relate. I have 5 children, and each one is different. And when you have children, and you hear this often, and it's not a healthy approach to parenting, but I've done it, I'm guilty of it, is that we look at them all just as a child, not as a unique individual soul. That was so beautiful, and what a gift to your son.
Thank you.
And oh, a pure gift. And he will always honor that. And it's because you are seeing him for who he is, not what you think he should be. And we are taught that. And I know that so many things, I love my parents, so don't get me wrong. They did the best they could have then. And as we are doing the best that we can. But I remember saying numerous times, certain, traits, I said, I will not be like that when I am a mother. I will not be like that. And then you wake up sometime going,
and you're like,
oh my
yeah.
God, I'm doing the same thing. I sound just like my parents.
Of course. I mean, that's the template, right? I mean, that is the template that we have, and it requires the work to change them, the choice, and then the work to make sure that pattern is different in us.
Yeah. And it's teaching them. I have one son that if you're listening, just know I love you so much, is that we do have that personality conflict. I don't want to call it a conflict. I call it, it is just an awareness of him being as a unique individual. We do butt heads. We do.
It's like polishing there's another Sufi teaching of like, it's like they're polishing the edges of our diamond. It's like the coal is under pressure, and that's how it gets polished, right? It's like, these difficult places can be the like holding the greatest gifts for us, right? If we really just allow, and it's like, what's happening here? It's like those are where like the jewels are buried,
Isn't that so true? And I do feel like that is that relationship. He is teaching me so much about myself.
And you him as well, right? It's like there is like you have an agreement.
Yeah, and it's powerful. It's
so
very
powerful.
strong. And there are so many times that this son in particular, he will often say, well, I guess several of my kids, will say, can you just have a real conversation with me, Mom? Can you just have a real conversation instead of it coming from this authoritative, I'm your mother.
Well, I mean, and we, that's what we were talking about. It's like, am I reacting and dysregulated and totally in unconscious behavior, or am I regulated enough to be like, uncomfortable, and let's all have a seat and talk about the really hard thing that's happening here.
Yeah.
Or the thing, again, back to resistance, the thing we really don't want to have to address, or but it's really, how do we get out of those reactive moments and into responsibility with what's actually unfolding, right?
Yeah.
I mean, and my kid, God bless him, I don't know about yours, but he'll just be like, it looks like you're upset, would you like 5 minutes to calm down so we can come back to this conversation? And I'm just like, yes, I need 5. I might need 10, but I will come back, And it's like, again, not his job to be regulating me, but also like he has the capacity to see, and we've talked about, it's not helpful when you start coming at me when I'm in that state. I'm already emotionally drunk, like that's when I need a little time out. I need a little help. When you get dysregulated, that's what you need. So let's have this agreement with each other that if I see that in you, I'll be like, hey, could we take a little time out here? It looks like we're a little outside of sobriety. It's like, and nothing good comes out of being emotionally drunk. That's when we say things we don't mean. It's when we have the mess to clean up after, right? And it's like, and it's really just, how do we interrupt those cycles, be self-responsible, give ourselves the time we need to come back into regulation, and then, okay, let's have a do-over. Let's really come back to this with fresh eyes.
Absolutely. And for him to be able to have that awareness at, did you say 14?
I mean, he was 14. Yeah.
Oh my goodness, that is huge. And
it's pretty miraculous.
Yeah. Very few at that age have that awareness. Yeah. And what a gift, again, that is, just to everyone that is in his presence, because for him to be that in tune, to be able to tell, an adult, especially his mother, that it looks like you're upset. Okay, that is wonderful. And we need to teach more of that.
Right.
And
I mean, and this is that next generation of how things really get to be different for them. And because of the work you've done in your life, because of the work I've done,
Yeah.
and it really is part of that evolutionary experience. So,
Yeah. So on the topic of, regulation and shifting from the state of deregulation into
yeah.
regulation, what are some of the tools and practices that you bring forward that have helped you personally and others that you work with?
Absolutely. Well, I have a very dedicated spiritual practice. So
Mhm,
I meditate a lot,
mhm,
a lot. And I work with my teachers, which has been very helpful. Like I've been on a spiritual path for very, decades, and I've had a spiritual teacher. Um, and some things that are just like immediate and that you can do right now in the moment is what you talk about a lot is breath, right? It's like, can I just slow myself down? Can I bring that breath all the way into my body? Can I work with my heartbeat to get it down? And another one is just sound.
mm,
Like I have this beautiful sound teacher. She teaches about the voice and sound, and it's just like start humming. Like, and then it's like, what do we know? It's like, oh, it stimulates, whether it's a deep breath or the toning or the humming, it's stimulating the vagus nerve,
mhm.
which takes us out of fight or flight and brings us into rest and relaxation so that we can, again, get our wits about us. And it really is like in the beginning, we just do it after the fact, and then it's like maybe we can interrupt that cycle, but it's like have a daily practice,
Mhm.
even if it's 5 minutes a day where you're just, and for so many women too, it's like let your voice be heard.
Mm.
Just make a sound, let that move out, bring your breath deeper into your body than maybe you've ever brought it. Explore what's there at those edges where the tightness in your belly is, or where that your shoulders are, just clenched down. And so it's like, for me, breath and sound are two of the most powerful regular, tools that I use regularly.
Yeah, yeah, both very beautiful and helping to kind of recalibrate and balance through that vibration. And
Yeah.
it's beautiful. I know I was speaking with someone who sings in a choir yesterday, and she was sharing that, breath work is powerful, is their warm up, is their powerful warm up to better set in before they go and sing, and project,
Right.
the course. And it's such a powerful, moving, inner moving. And that's what I share about the expansion side of it, which really is regulating and helping you
Yeah.
to tap the vagus nerve. But being able to feel the breath and honor that breath, because we so often ignore it or we take it for granted because it's just an automatic
It's a,
response.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, and also I would just go back to like that spiritual connection we talked about, right? When I am well connected, I am sourced by something greater than myself, and it
Mhm.
expands my capacity to meet my life. So again, it just goes back to those practices of, what is your practice for connecting and remembering the truth of who you are, that innate, intelligent, infinite part of you, that is really wants to be known more intimately by you.
Yeah, that is so beautiful, as I've said
Yeah.
numerous times now in our conversation. Jen, is there anything lasting that you would like to share? We've had a lot of people watching, and I'm so grateful for all of you that have been tuned in to us during this whole time together. Is there anything that you would like to leave today? And I will pop in how everybody can get in touch with you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's like the thing I'm thinking right now, and this has just been another piece of my journey, as a spiritually aware human, as somebody who has a lot of trauma. I've not wanted, I mean, being in the body, I think it's a little different. I mean, you have a different perspective because you teach, you're all about the body and health and exercise. And for me, being in the body has been really difficult. It's been my hardest challenge. And so as you were asking that, it's like my toes are moving, and it's like, oh yeah, just remember your feet.
Mhm.
I mean, it's like this is another one of those practices. If you can get outside and put your feet on the earth, great. Even if you can't, it's like this is the descending. We're coming into and down, 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 down further than most of us feel comfortable being, right? And so it's like, remember the earth, get that grounding, open up your root, feel your feet, and like come into life and all that it's asking of you.
Yes.
So that's what I will leave today with.
That is lovely. And I have your website here,
Thank you so much.
JennSavage.com, as well as I will pop in here. This is what I like about this. And your email, is an email good for
That's
anyone that would
perfect.
like to reach out and get in
Yes.
touch with you? Well, this has been a wonderful conversation as always, and I look forward to many more conversations with you. And, and everyone listening, just really tap into uh, the language of regulation and not resist it. Really sit with that for a moment and write and think about how your life is being impacted by being in a dysregulated state. It's not everyday language. And I was just sharing with someone this morning about the relationship with food, is that don't kick and scream. Don't fear what you're feeding yourself right now. Just sit with it. Just sit and honor every bite and not feel judgment toward yourself, towards the food or anything. And then you can relate that to anything in life. Is just pause for just a moment. Take those deep breaths and honor being here, right now, and know that it's a beautiful moment. And that is, one way that I share in terms of how to shift from that state of, having such a fight or flight baseline and bringing it down so that you can start to develop the flow state in life. And it's a beautiful thing. So beautiful. And so beautiful to have you, Jenn, and your voice and just your wisdom. And thank you for sharing your stories. And I look forward to, again, that next conversation.
I look forward to it as well. Thank you so much, Lauren.
All right. Take care and bye, everyone. And we'll see you next time.